As reflected on this upcoming Sunday's readings, I thought of the movie Bruce Almighty. That's where Jim Carrey, or let's say Bruce, is God for a certain period of time. And obviously, there's power that comes with this role. But then, at the same time, it made me think of, do we ever have compassion of God? What's it like to be God? Now, in one sense, it's perfect because there's this perfect love within the Trinity of giving and receiving love. So that's all good. But then, the responsibility of kind of trying to guide all 8 billion plus of us in this entire universe comes with a bit of responsibility. Do we ever have compassion on God? In the gospel reading, we ought to have compassion on Jesus because he's a little upset. And if one of our friends is upset, hopefully we reach out to them in some way or just listen to what's going on. Now, why is Jesus upset? The first thing is he's not upset of what's happening to him. That's what we should always be mindful of. Even when Jesus goes to the cross, he never gets upset of what's being inflicted upon him. One thing I was pondering this past week is, when Jesus is on the cross, it's bad enough he's on the cross, but people are insulting him and mocking him. Oh my goodness, let it go, people. But the reason why Jesus is angry is because of the injustice and the greed that's happening in the temple. The first thing is the animal sacrifices. You can't buy and sell God's forgiveness. Forgiveness from God is a gift. All we have to do is turn to God and receive that great gift. And this gift is constantly flowing out of God's love. And so it's always accessible for us. And we can never exhaust this great gift. And God actually delights when we turn to God and ask for mercy or ask for forgiveness or ask for grace or say thank you. God is Trinitarian and wants a relationship with us. And even our desire to pray is actually God's desire within us to pray. Now, also what's going on here is you had to pay a temple tax. And of course, people came from all around for the Passover celebration. And so some people came from Gentile territory, and therefore they're carrying unclean money. So you had to exchange this for temple money. And of course, you got ripped off through this process. Now, the thing is, you had to pay a temple tax. Obviously, you have to build this structure, this temple, so you got to pay for it somehow, some way. But people, once again, were being ripped off. And the people who Jesus is most concerned about are the poor, because if you couldn't afford to pay your tax, you weren't welcomed in the temple. The other thing is where all this commotion is happening is actually the part of the temple for Gentiles. So if they wanted to go and pray, what a ruckus place to have to pray. So this is no good for them. So Jesus is standing up for Gentiles. He's standing up for poor people. But like I said earlier, we need to have compassion on God. Now, in the first reading from the book of the prophet Ezekiel, we have this living water that's flowing through the temple. But this living water is a reminder that we are temples of God. When this is being announced to the people that you're a temple of God, even in the second reading, it makes the same announcement. It offers dignity to each and every person. 8 out of 10 people were slaves in this time period. Women were like second-class citizens, and children really weren't all that much better. And yet, everyone was a temple of God. If we all approached each person that way to give them that dignity, that each person is a temple of God, wow, that would change our perspective. We would have more compassion on people. Every encounter would be an encounter with God, and it really is. And even if people are a little upset, maybe we just have to simply listen to them. Just let them get it out. And then at the end of it, they can come to a peace, the peace that the world cannot give, but the Spirit within can give. And so Jesus, makes this announcement that his temple will be destroyed. And I'm speaking about his body, but that it'll be resurrected. So often in faith, we cheer on Jesus about his resurrection, but we are a resurrected people. We are the body of Christ. We are temples of God. And so therefore we have to go out and we have to care for others, especially those who are spiritually and materially poor. So as we gather around the table, Lord, you know, we consume who we are and what a blessing it is, so we can be compassionate with God and we can be compassionate with others.